199 Balloons, Restored Director's Edition by Srinidhi Ranganathan for bookspots.com. 199 Balloons is a heart-touching spiritual novella by Srinidhi Ranganathan. Journey with a young mountain guide whose innocent act of kindness leads him through trials, hidden treasure, divine encounters, and a profound awakening to India's timeless spiritual truths. Let's start reading the complete tale. Don't forget to visit bookspots.com website to read more incredible tales of awe. Bookspots also offers mind-blowing artificial intelligence courses to skyrocket your career. We all know artificial intelligence is booming. It will shape the future of India and the world. The future of an artificial intelligence technology and a machine-dominated world has already begun. Let's work with robots and AI agents to perform tasks 100 times faster than utilizing our manual efforts. Thank you. 199 Balloons. Part 1. The Balloons Beneath the Rock. There are moments in life that appear simple, fleeting, even foolish. But behind such moments, sometimes the universe weaves a deeper story. One such moment came to me the day I received a packet from a fair, soft-spoken lady on the mountain path. I remember it clearly. I had guided her up to the summit, where the wind danced through the tall grass and the clouds floated like white birds over a sea of blue. She seemed like no other visitor, cloaked in grace, her skin fair as moonlight, her voice carrying the stillness of a temple bell. As we reached the peak, she handed me a brown paper packet, tied with a thin red thread. "Keep them. This might come to your help someday," she said softly, her eyes gentle, her presence oddly comforting. Curious, I peeked inside. Balloons, colorful, cheerful, childlike. I smiled politely. "Thank you." She only smiled in return. No one had ever gifted me anything for helping them climb the mountains. And certainly not balloons. I was no child, not anymore. Still, I carried the gift back and hid it safely under a large rock in a shallow cave, the place where I stored my old spade and tools. I remember thinking I'd blow them up one day and watch them fly high, carrying my dreams skyward. That night, like many others, I climbed my favorite tree, looked up at the sky, and began counting the stars. I often felt the stars were like stories, silent companions that whispered truths only the heart could understand. When I finally returned home, the garden was filled with the scent of night-blooming jasmine, and there, seated on his favorite wooden chair, was Grandpa, his bags packed at his feet. "Sariz," he said joyfully, "we are leaving for Africa immediately. Your uncle, who is ill, wants us to come over and look after him and the factory." His words struck me like lightning. Africa. I was rooted in this soil. I was made of mountain dust and river songs. But Grandpa, the cows, the sheep, are home. He chuckled lightly, but there was a sadness in his eyes. "I have sold the cattle, but the house and its memories shall remain. We will return soon when your uncle is better." We left the next morning. My feet dragged on the dirt road. I didn't know I was walking away from childhood. I didn't know that some journeys steal the scent of innocence. I had forgotten about the balloons, forgotten about the lady. Life has a way of pushing gentle memories beneath harder stones. When we reached Africa, our lives turned darker than the mines we worked in. My uncle had already passed. His house was not a home, it was a tomb of unpaid debts and desperate silence. We were strangers in a land of sorrow. People came daily to collect money we didn't have. Grandpa and I sold everything: his factory, the house, even our dreams. We dug through earth in the mines, day after day, with hands that once cradled seedlings now bleeding through iron picks. Never the mountain house, Grandpa would murmur in his sleep. That is our soul. We will not sell it. But even the soul sometimes must weep under the weight of hunger. After years of torment, we returned to our beloved mountains, briefly, for one last farewell. Grandpa had finally agreed to sell the land. That day, he said, "Go play, boy. You've missed these mountains. Go see the cave again." I ran. My legs moved as if powered by the winds of my forgotten childhood. There, under the rock, the packet remained, time-worn but untouched. The lady's memory stirred gently in my heart, like the flutter of a prayer flag. I opened the packet. The balloons still slept within, their colors slightly faded. Out of nostalgia, I picked one red, round, waiting. And as I brought it to my lips, something felt odd. I noticed powder inside. I emptied it into my palm. Gold. Gold dust. Balloon after balloon, 199 in total. Each hid a shimmering truth inside. A hidden treasure. A divine act of mercy dressed as a child's gift. I ran back to Grandpa, tears mixing with the mountain mist. He didn't believe me at first. But when I showed him, I saw something glow in his eyes, hope, long forgotten. And yet, deep inside me, I still heard the woman's voice. This might come to your help someday. She knew. Who was she? A traveler, a messenger, or something more? As the wind howled gently outside that night, I counted the balloons once again. 199. Not 200. Not 198. Just one shy of 200. A number that felt intentional. Little did I know, then the story was not about gold. The real story was only beginning. Part 2. The Memory of Mountains. Morning arrived with the fragrance of damp earth and the call of birds that had never forgotten me. I stepped outside and the first breath I took felt like I was inhaling my own soul. The mountain wind touched my face like an old friend returning from a long journey. I looked at Grandpa, who stood quietly by the cattle shed, running his hands gently over the wooden fence. He didn't speak, but I saw the silence in his eyes. It was not empty. It was full of gratitude, full of memories, full of something sacred. We did not need to sell the mountain house anymore. The gold dust from the balloons was enough to clear every debt that clung to our lives like a shadow. It was more than wealth. It was a second chance, a mercy we had never asked for, but had somehow been granted. In the days that followed, the rhythm of life returned to its old melody. The cows mooed lazily in the meadows. The sheep moved like soft clouds across the grass. Grandpa hummed old songs in the garden while watering the flowering bushes that once wilted in our absence. The firewood crackled again in the kitchen hearth. Our hearts, once worn by sorrow, were now wrapped in warmth. And I returned to guiding those who wished to see the mountain tops. They came with their cameras and curiosity, but the mountain always gave them more than they came for. Some left lighter, some left quieter. Some, like the mysterious lady, left something behind. I often thought of her, her eyes, her gentle smile, her strange gift. Who was she? Why did she choose me? I would sit beneath my tree in the evenings, the same tree where I used to count the stars as a child, and look at the sky. I felt she was somewhere near, watching, waiting, smiling still. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, painting the sky with hues of saffron and gold, I decided to blow the balloons, all of them, one by one. I climbed the old tree, just as I had done years ago, and tied a thin string around the branch. The first balloon I blew was blue, the color of the sky that now stretched endlessly before me. I released it and watched it rise. It floated higher, slow and serene, as if it carried a blessing too soft for words. Then came the green one, the yellow, the violet, the red. One after another, they lifted into the open air, a procession of colors returning to the heavens. I counted carefully. Each balloon took a part of me with it, my childhood, my sorrow, my longing, my gratitude. I let it all rise. When I reached the last balloon, I hesitated. It was the 199th, a soft pink one, smaller than the rest. I held it close, wondering why there were only 199. It felt complete, yet incomplete. It whispered something to me that I could not yet understand. That night, Grandpa and I sat by the fire. I told him about the 199th balloon, about how it felt different. He listened quietly and then said, "Sometimes what is missing is also a message. We must wait for it to reveal itself." I nodded and leaned back, watching the flames. They danced like ancient spirits. As I closed my eyes, I saw her face again, that same lady. Her smile had not faded. Her eyes looked deeper this time. Was she sent to change our fate? Was this life a story written by unseen hands? Something had shifted in me. I began to feel that life was not just a journey of days and duties. It was something higher, something fucked in divine. There was a presence that walked with us, one that hid in the silence, in the sunlight, in the stars. And soon I was to meet him. Not in dreams, not in illusions, but in the most unexpected of ways. Part 3. The Last Balloon and the Unseen Step. The days passed with a quiet kind of joy. Our mountain home was filled once again with the hum of life. Cattle grazed lazily, the hens clucked in rhythm with the breeze, and the skies wore the colors of peace. Yet my heart remained tethered to a silent question. The 199th balloon still sat untouched near the old spade in the cave. I would visit it often, just to look at it, just to wonder. Grandpa saw my restlessness. One morning, while we shared warm millet porridge by the garden steps, he looked at me with the kindness of the mountains and said, "Perhaps that balloon is waiting, not for you to release it, but for something to happen first." His words rested in my heart like a lamp, faint but glowing. That evening, I decided to walk alone to the summit. The air was crisp, and the grass beneath my feet held the scent of wildflowers. My path wound past the tall pine trees, where the shadows grew longer as the sun drifted lower. I reached the top just before dusk and sat down on a flat stone that faced the wide valley. The world looked endless from up there, like a giant breath held in stillness. As I watched the sky change its colors, a soft breeze touched my cheek. It was gentle, like a hand reaching out. I turned instinctively and saw a boy. He was young, perhaps my age when I first received the balloons. Dressed in simple robes the color of butter and peacock feathers, his hair was dark and curling gently over his forehead. He held a flute in his hand, and his eyes, oh his eyes, were filled with a light that spoke straight to the heart. He smiled as if he knew me. I rose to greet him, unsure of what to say. He spoke first, his voice softer than the wind, stronger than silence. You have been waiting for something, or perhaps something has been waiting for you. I felt no fear, only stillness, only grace. I don't know why there were only 199 balloons, I whispered. I thought it was complete, but it wasn't. He looked at the sky and said, "The final balloon is not yours to blow. It is meant to rise when your heart remembers where it came from." I didn't understand fully, but his words entered my soul like water into dry earth. I sat beside him, and we watched the first star appear. "Do you know who gave me the balloons?" I asked quietly. He smiled without answering. Instead, he raised his flute and began to play. The melody was unlike anything I had ever heard. It was not a song. It was a remembrance. It felt like I had known this music before I was born. It spoke of eternal love, of playful secrets, of a joy that never fades. Tears welled in my eyes, not from sorrow, but from the beauty that surrounded me in that moment. When the song ended, he stood and placed his hand gently on my shoulder. "Keep the last balloon safe. When the time comes, it will rise on its own." I blinked, and the light of a firefly flickered past my eyes. When I turned, the boy was gone. The mountain summit was quiet again, but not empty. Something had awakened. As I descended in the twilight, the stars above seemed to follow me. I no longer needed to count them. I felt they knew my name. The last balloon remained untouched, but now I understood. It held something sacred, something divine. Not just gold, not just dust, but a truth that waited to bloom. And slowly, gently, the threads of this story were being tied by hands I could not see. Part 4. The Flute That Awakens the Soul. The mountain air was different when I returned home. It was not the breeze alone or the songs of the birds that made it so. It was a shift in the stillness itself, as though the trees now knew a secret and the stones had whispered it to the soil. Grandpa noticed the light in my eyes and asked nothing. He simply placed his hand on my head as I passed him by, the way a sage blesses a seeker. I went straight to the cave and looked at the last balloon again. It rested quietly in its place, yet it felt alive, as if it too had heard the flute's sacred song. In the days that followed, I found myself walking more slowly, breathing more deeply. I would sit by the river and listen. Not to the sound of water alone, but to the silences between the ripples. Something in me had begun to listen to the language of stillness, to the voice that lives beyond words. One morning, I met an old sadhu near the forest edge. He wore robes the color of the morning sun and walked with a wooden staff decorated with tiny bells. His eyes were like polished mirrors, reflecting peace instead of sight. He greeted me with a smile that felt older than the mountains. "You have seen him," he said before I could even speak. I looked at him in wonder. "The boy with the flute," he added, touching his heart. Yes, I whispered, but I don't know who he truly is. The sadhu sat beneath a banyan tree and motioned for me to join him. There, in the embrace of roots and shade, he told me what my soul had longed to remember. He is the one who plays through the hearts of all beings. He is the rhythm behind the pulse of the world. In Dwapara Yuga, they called him Krishna. In every age, he returns not to punish but to awaken. He hides in simplicity, in the smile of a child, in the call of a cuckoo, in the rising of a red balloon. As I listened, I felt time melt away. The story of Lord Krishna unfolded not as a tale from a scripture, but as a living breath inside me. I saw him as the cowherd boy of Vrindavan, dancing in the rain, with anklets that chimed in joy. I saw him as the friend of Arjuna, guiding the warrior with words that pierced illusion. I saw him as the beloved of all hearts, who never leaves even when unseen. The sadhu closed his eyes and said softly, "The 199 balloons were the chapters of your journey. The last one is not a balloon. It is a question. When it rises, it will not carry gold. It will carry your surrender." I returned to the cave that evening and knelt beside the last balloon. I did not try to blow it. I only sat with it, the way one sits beside a sacred fire. The sky was awash with saffron light, and a gentle wind rustled through the leaves. For the first time, I did not seek answers. I only offered my silence. That night, I had a dream. The boy with the flute stood beneath a tree filled with white blossoms. He looked at me and smiled. Then he whispered something I could not hear, and yet my heart understood it as clearly as sunlight. I awoke with tears on my face and gratitude in my breath. From that day onward, I began to live differently. I served without seeking praise. I gave without counting. I walked without hurry. The mountains felt more like a temple, and every visitor felt like a soul on pilgrimage. One evening, while guiding a small group to the summit, I saw a young girl pause and look toward the horizon. "What are you looking at?" I asked. She smiled and said, "I thought I heard music." "A flute." I smiled back without replying. That night, I went to the cave again. The final balloon was gone. Only a single peacock feather lay in its place. I picked it up gently and pressed it to my forehead. And in that moment, I knew. The last balloon had risen, not with wind, but with love. Part 5. The Dharma of the Feather. The feather rested in my palm like a quiet truth, light as a sigh, yet heavy with meaning. It shimmered in the morning sun, the deep blue at its eye glowing, like the center of the universe. As I looked at it, I felt no need to ask how it had come or where the balloon had gone. Some answers are not spoken, they are lived. Grandpa saw the feather that evening as I placed it gently on the wooden shelf near the lamp. "Keep it safe," he said with a soft nod. "Some things are not gifts, they are messages." That night, I sat near the river where the water flowed slow and clear. The moonlight rested on the surface like a silver hymn, and the crickets sang a soft chorus. I thought of Lord Krishna, not as a god distant and grand, but as the friend who walks barefoot beside you, who hides in your laughter, who waits patiently behind every choice you make. The old sadhu had once said that life is not about perfection, it is about alignment. To live in tune with Dharma is to live like the river, always flowing toward the ocean, never forgetting its source. In the days that followed, the feather seemed to guide me. Whenever I was unsure, I would look at it, and somehow clarity would rise within me like dawn over the hills. When a traveler once scolded me for a wrong turn, I smiled instead of defending myself. When a poor boy begged for food, I gave him not only a meal but my time. I listened to his stories, and I saw in his eyes the same longing I had once carried. One morning, a family came to climb the mountain. Among them was an old man who could barely walk. The others moved ahead, but he struggled behind, leaning on a cane. I slowed my pace and walked beside him. "Do you think I will reach the top?" he asked with tired eyes. "You already have," I said gently, "because your heart is here." He smiled and continued walking, step by step. When we finally reached the summit, he wept quietly, not from exhaustion, but from something else. A return, a remembering. In that moment, I understood the meaning of seva. Not service for duty, but service for love. To serve another is to recognize the same divine spark in them that breathes in you. That was Krishna's way. He washed the feet of his friends. He danced with the humble. He guided the mighty, but never lost the innocence of a cowherd. As I descended with the group, I felt a breeze touch my shoulder. It carried the faint scent of sandalwood and jasmine. A song stirred in the wind, the gentle sound of a flute. Not loud, not insistent, just enough for the soul to remember. I closed my eyes and bowed my head. Later that evening, I placed the feather into a small wooden frame carved by Grandpa. We lit a diya before it, not as a ritual, but as a thank you. For the journey, for the presence, for the unseen hand that had always guided us. The balloon had flown, the feather had remained. And now a new path was opening. One that did not rise toward the sky, but turned inward, toward the divine that sings within every heart. Part 6. The Sky Within. The seasons changed like verses of a sacred hymn. The fields ripened and were harvested. The trees shed their leaves and grew them back. Life in the mountains flowed gently again, like the river that never forgets its way home. Yet within me, something had forever shifted. I had returned from a place I could not point to on a map. It was not a destination of distance. It was a return to the core, a return to the sky that lives inside. The framed feather rested beside our evening lamp, radiating a stillness that spoke more than any scripture. Often, visitors would look at it and ask its story. I would smile and tell them it was a gift. If they pressed further, I would say it belonged to someone who taught me how to see with the heart. Grandpa had grown quieter over the months. He would sit on the garden bench, wrapped in his shawl, his eyes watching the hills with a tenderness that comes only when one begins to see beyond the veil. One morning, as I served him warm milk with turmeric, he looked at me and said, "You have been blessed in a way few are. Do not keep it for yourself. Let the blessing walk into the world." That night, I prayed not with words but with silence. I sat under the tree where I once counted stars as a child. I did not wish for anything. I only offered my gratitude to the lady who never returned, to the boy with the flute, to the journey that broke and healed me, to the final balloon that never needed to be blown. In my heart, I heard the words of the Gita, not read from a book, but whispered by life itself. Do your work with love. Offer the fruits without clinging. Let every step be guided by faith and not by fear. That is dharma. That is freedom. One morning, a group of children from a nearby village visited the mountain. They ran through the grass with joy that only innocence can hold. One boy tugged at my sleeve and asked if I had any balloons. I smiled and said, "Once I had 199. The last one flew into the sky and became a prayer." He did not understand, but he laughed anyway and chased the wind. That evening, as the sky turned golden and the air filled with the sweet scent of marigold blooms, I stood by the cave one last time. I placed a small stone there and folded my hands in prayer. Not a farewell, but a simple bow to all that had been and all that would come. From a distance, I heard the soft sound of a flute. It rose with the breeze, circled the trees, and faded into the open sky. I did not turn to look. I knew who played it. I walked back slowly toward the house where Grandpa waited with warm food and lamplit eyes. The mountains behind me stood tall, not just as land, but as guardians of a truth that had taken root within me. Life would go on. People would come and go. Joys and sorrows would weave their endless dance. But the sky within me would remain open. And when someone lost their way, I would guide them, not only to the mountain's peak, but to the still place in their own heart. The place where a boy waits with a flute, where no balloon is ever lost, where love is not found but remembered. The end.